Hello once again, everyone. So, following the video I put up on Quarterstaff, a couple people have reached out to me and asked, what are some basic stuff that I can do, to get started? Some exercises, some general movement, some things to be aware of. And I figured, why not? So, first and foremost, if you're looking to get yourself a staff of your own, you can get it from a couple different places. Purple Heart sells them. You can get them out of ash or hickory or things like that. This one is actually made out of maple, and we made it ourselves, so I really like this guy. Had him for a long time. I actually got him when I was much shorter, which is quite a lot of, it's fun to see, right? But, things of that are great. You can also just get a dowel, honestly. You don't need it to be a proper stick if you're not focused on doing any work against anybody yet. And if you're not doing any pel work, it's fine with just a dowel. After all, when you graduate up to using a proper staff, it's not that different. It's not like, using a dowel and then using a steel sword. It's end of the day, just a stick. But either way, let's talk a little bit about some basic exercises that people can start doing that are going to, one, give you something to do on your off time, and two, if you're just starting out, are really good for you. So first and foremost, something to be aware of is the change in older style versus newer style. So when it comes to more earlier Renaissance and medieval sources on staff, you're going to see a lot more symmetrical style of fighting. So generally, the dominant hand, in this case the right hand, is going to be on top back here, and we'll use passing step type footwork, or even do the thumb to thumb grip more often and use both ends a bit more equally. Versus later period, it tends to switch over to being mostly on the left side with the left hand on top, and those sorts of actions. Now, both are equally fine, and honestly, you should study all the staff you can. I mean, every culture in the world hit people with sticks, so mix and match. But if you're looking for something stylistically, generally I recommend start off training symmetrically, then start learning a style. So here's just some general stuff that you could do. Usually I'll start off classes by having people raise the staff above their head, get a nice stretch going, and then same thing, touch the toes, all that great stuff. Do that a couple times. Next thing I'll have people launch into is just a little guide that I came up with, which is you hold the staff about in the middle of one of its halves. You're going to draw a half circle on the ground in front of you. Reach over behind like you're putting it away in a sheath. Don't let your fingers relax. Don't let your wrist bend too much. That way you get a nice bit of stretch here. Grab the staff underneath your own arm. Do the same thing on the other side. This is just something I came up with that wakes my shoulders up and seems to work pretty well for the other people I have here at the school, so if it helps you out, great. But the trick is, don't let this turn into, non-controlled twirling. That's not hard to do. The point of it is nice and slow and controlled. Now, one of the other good things that you can start practicing to warm up, to wake up, is going to be stuff that builds up the strength of your arms individually and also builds up the durability of your wrists. So, something I personally recommend is you extend the staff up above your head. I'm only holding on to a little bit of it now. And you just slowly start letting it go around the clock face. Now what I'm doing here is I'm just keeping my shoulder and my elbow and all of that engaged as the weight of the staff slowly begins to take a toll. And when I reach my finishing point, I hold. And then when I can no longer hold it, I just let it relax. You can either just let it go down to the floor, or with a little practice, do what I did. You do that on one side, do that on the other. Do that back and forth, maybe a total of 4 times. Then you can switch to doing it in the front. So same idea, I'm just now using my shoulder stabilizers in the front. And you're going to find asymmetry in your arms. That's okay. With time, they will even up within reason. Right? If you're doing other sword stuff, you may find that your dominant arm remains the stronger, but it's okay. Now, one of the other things that you want to get used to doing is letting that wrist hold onto the weight. First off, make sure that you have plenty of room around you. But a nice simple cutting pattern that I believe I've gone over before, but I'll go over it again, is going to be the sword grip. So I move my hands down, put this onto my shoulder. What I'm going to do is I'm going to swing across. Right about here, I'm going to turn my hands over to hit with the short edge. Bring the hands up again, long edge. Bring it back onto my shoulder. Short, long, back and forth. Do that several times. Put your other hand on top and do it several times. And after a couple weeks of practice, then you can start looking at doing it with one hand. Now, when it comes to doing things like this with one hand, what you have to remember is that once the staff gets going, it's not going to stop until it reaches the end of its momentum. So make sure you know where it's going. I keep this up above my head, and when it reaches its end, I fold it back onto my shoulder. And you just go back and forth like this a couple times. Now the trick is, I am giving it power here and there, but I am not trying to power it the whole way through. I'm more focused on getting it going and just keeping it going. And after a bit, you switch hands. Do that a couple times and it will start building up the wrist. One other fun one that you can do, since you're just mostly practicing by yourself, is stand like so, switch your back hand around, hold on to the staff, and what you're going to do is you're going to release with your lead hand and strike forward at the end. Now, what you would do if you were actually doing the strike is just go ahead and whip it through, but since I'm not going to hit my floor and I'm focusing more on control, I just am powering it by squeezing my grip. And I just catch it with my other hand, and then I can fold back into the beginning place. Do that a couple times on both sides. Worthwhile practice. Now, the other thing that you should really practice is the idea of movement with your sticks. So what I'd recommend in this case is good old-fashioned mire cutting pattern. Really is the best thing. You can do this thumb to point, or you can do it thumb to thumb. Either way is just fine. But the pattern is basically down, up, up, down. Executed with nice simple passing steps. If you want to do it thumbs to point, then I recommend you start doing the hand switches, which I go into more detail in my other video, but down, up, down. All that's great. If you wanted to start doing some of the later period stuff, something I have my guys doing at the moment, is starting off in the high guard, striking, advance, thrust, recover, up, strike while moving backward, retreat, and then you can either do a thrust or return to the beginning. That's a pretty fun one as well. Now, when it comes to training thrust, that's something you want to practice a lot, because that's what you're going to be mostly doing when it comes to executing your hits, especially when it comes to free play. So getting control of that as soon as you can, and always working to make sure you know exactly where your staff is going and with how much force, always worthwhile. When it comes to delivering thrusts, always make sure to move your arms first, get that extension going, then follow it through with your body. That way, I turn what could be a very structured, very good hitting thrust into something that I can control, right? That's not hitting him all that hard, and I didn't change my mechanics. Note I'm not rearing back before I deliver that thrust, even when I do the hard one. It's just about extension and knowing exactly how far it's going to go. Same idea when it goes to flung thrusts. Now, flung thrusts are a scary one, right? Because by shoving my hand forward and pool cueing it like this, you can't necessarily temper it as much as you would expect, so you've got to mostly know your range. Now, the trick with that is you'll want to see how far it's going, get used to the motion, and then pick a soft target. An apple or an orange actually works great for this. Make sure you're at your extension and get used to just touching, right? Gentle like that. We know for realsies, you can put some pretty decent force into that and crush someone's throat. But that's what you need to get used to doing, right? After a little bit, you can start adding this in and chaining things together. So eventually, your general exercise can start looking something like this. Strike, thrust, whip, back, strike, all those great things. And flow patterns are really great what to do with the staff because it's a symmetrical weapon, it's meant to fight more than one person in some contexts, so always good. But either way, those are just some off the top of my head exercises for people to do. Hopefully this is helpful, but otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and we'll go over some other staff techniques another time.